You are tuning in to the Atlanta Realtors Rundown, the official podcast for the Atlanta Realtors. We're here to keep you updated with the latest trends, topics, and keep you in the know of our ever-changing Atlanta market. We hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome back to another episode of the Atlanta Realtors Rundown. We are in for a treat today. We have my friend Collin Gravitt here. He is joining us from Campbell & Brannan, closing attorney here in Atlanta. And a little bit about him before we get started. He joined Campbell & Brannan in 2011, and he has enjoyed working with that firm. Their outstanding clientele ranging from agents and builders and buyers and sellers. He deals with all of those. His ability to connect with others makes Collin a fan favorite, I would agree. Collin is proud of the camaraderie Campbell & Brannan attorneys and employees share, enabling him to work collaboratively to create unique and tailored solutions for his clients. A little bit about his personal life. Collin was born and raised in Cumming, so he's local. And he now resides in Sandy Springs with his wife, Molly, who's just lovely. I adore her. And their two sons, also very cute, Finian and Asher. Collin and his family enjoy tending to their family's chickens and ducks, traveling, woodworking, snow skiing, attending church at Peachtree Presbyterian Church, and of course, cheering on the dogs.
Go dogs.
Thank you, Collin, for coming in today.
Thank you, Kate. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to have you here, and I think you have, we could probably do like 10 episode series of information you've got, of experience you've been through. But today, I think what we kind of want to start with is really just spending the time peeking behind the curtain on the contract to closing process. As real estate agents, we're out in the field, we're doing our job, we're running around, we're trying to get these houses under contract, and then we're sending things along. But a lot of agents probably don't even really understand the process, the back end, the technicalities kind of what you guys are doing. So do you want to just start by walking us through your version, your side, your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And you're right. I mean, you guys are out there selling, you're dealing with your clients, you're doing all the things, and your job is to get that house under contract and give it to a trusted partner. Well, and this is where we see a lot of just the what I call the unnecessary problems, right? Where people don't fully grasp what we're doing and why we're doing it and what we need to do it. And then there are hiccups, not because of anybody's fault, just you didn't know, right? So there's just so many data points. There's so many informational pieces that we have to gather to be able to put together the closing and get it done on time and successfully. And understanding that, to your point, is key. So what we do, when we get a contract, we need all of it, all right? And I've talked to realtors in the past, and they're afraid to give us too much. And what I tell realtors is, just give us everything. We're capable of sifting through and taking what we need.
Right.
I had a realtor the other day. All they sent us was the counteroffer, just that. And she thought that's all we needed.
Oh, wow.
So we lost some time there going back and forth saying, hey, I need the actual original offer. I need the exhibits and the addendums and all the fun stuff that goes along with it, because that's part of our job, is to get all that together. So give it all to us.
Right.
So we'll order title. And one of the things that has to be done is a title examiner actually goes to the courthouse, and they have to actually know who the owner is. So if we've got a contract that doesn't have a name on it, it's just a signature, or it's not the right name, the examiner's kind of going on a wild goose chase trying to figure out who and what, or what entity owns it.
Right.
So giving us that information up front is very helpful, right? So they're doing their title exam. At the same time, our people are gathering the information we need. So we send out information forms. They're secure links to buyers and sellers, saying, hey, give us this info. We need social security numbers. If you have a mortgage, we need the payoff information and the lender information. And if there's an HOA, we need that information. And are you local? Are you going to be able to come to closing? Are you a foreign investor? Is this your primary residence? All these questions. And we get a lot of pushback sometimes. Why are you asking all this? Well, there's reasons for everything. We're not just gathering data. We don't get to sell it and make a ton of money like a lot of these companies. So as a realtor, I know you're not the seller or the buyer, but understanding that and helping push your clients along, hey, did you fill this out? You need to get this to them, because the longer it takes for us to get that, the less time we have to order a payoff, to order an HOA closing letter, to get things cleared. So that's just the surface level stuff, right? That's just like, hey, give us this data so we can get it set up, especially if it's a thing. I mean, I feel like more and more buyers and sellers are out of town.
Right.
They're not able to come to closing at the same time. We've got to coordinate split closings. We've got to coordinate mail-aways. We've got to coordinate powers of attorney. I mean, it's just, there's so many moving parts. And this stuff doesn't happen right away, right? If there's a power of attorney, we've got to get it prepped. We've got to get it signed. We've got to get the original, all these things. So the sooner we know this, the sooner it's done, it's sitting there, one less thing to worry about, right? And it happens all the time where one of our pre-closers may send out an email and say, hey guys, look, we're scheduled for, I see the closing scheduled for the 22nd. We've got 11, 12, and 1 available. Oh, well, I'm not going to be able to be there. Okay.
Yay.
Yeah, would have been like we need to know these kind of things.
Right.
So, as a realtor, you guys are guides for these folks. I mean, it's hard for us to remember because we do this every day. Buyers and sellers don't.
Right.
Right? And oftentimes they may only do this a couple of times, and they're stressed. A sale, a purchase and a sale, a move, all those things, good, bad, or indifferent, is never easy. And so everybody's throwing everything at them all the time. And good realtors will help filter that and help guide their clients. Say, hey, you need to slow down for a second. Fill this out for the closing attorney.
Right.
All right. The other thing we run into, and this is not necessarily anybody's fault, really. It's just kind of a hard part of the business, is special stipulations.
Sure.
Right? They govern so much of a contract. Right? You've got these wonderful GAR forms, but they're forms. And every contract is going to have its own nuances. And so special steps come into play a lot. And a poorly written special step can really send things south real quick. And what I tell people is, you got to step back, right? You are in the middle of it. You're in the middle of the contract negotiations. You're in the middle. You saw the house. You know your clients. So you write a special step based on that narrow world you're living in. But what you need to think about is, if a third party who has no idea what's going on with this can come in and read it and understand exactly what's going on, then you've got a good special step.
Would it be out of line to say that it's appropriate to develop a relationship with an attorney that you trust and do business with, that you could reach out to and ask them to help you craft that special stipulation?
Gosh, Kate, that is just a brilliant suggestion. I mean, 100%. I think that's the only way to really do it.
Right.
You're not lawyers. Well, some of you may be, but you're not lawyers. You're not trained in this, right? What we prefer, and we do it all day long. Hey, guys, you got a special step. You need some help. Craft it. Send us an email. Hey, this is what we're trying to do. What do you think? And we'll tweak it.
Right.
Most of the time, they're great. They may need an extra sentence here or there, but that's what we're here for, right? We're here to help you guys get the contract done, but get it done correctly.
Right. Maintaining clarity is such a huge point.
Huge.
And that's the whole purpose of the contract, right?
Right. That's why litigators exist. We don't want them to have to come in and take their side, right? You want to be able to read it, and you want to be able to know what's going on, and you want to be able to know what's going to happen if it doesn't happen, right? And all the time, people are like, well, that makes sense now, because they've had a moment to step back from it. So if you're in the thick of it, and I get it, you might be like having to pull off on the side of the road and be writing this and on the side of 285, but
please don't.
Get somewhere safe.
Yeah.
But it happens quickly.
Right.
There's a lot going on. But these are very important, and you need to step back, because so many times we've looked at special steps and said, I don't really know what they're wanting to do here, or this is what it means to me, but might not mean the same thing to another side. And when you get that, you get this conflict, and you get a contract there's an argument about the enforceability of certain provisions, and that can really slow things up. So you got to write it thinking, okay, there's going to be a closing attorney, and there's going to be a closer at a law firm that's going to be looking at this and trying to determine what this is supposed to be doing. And that will help you write your steps in such a way that we don't have any of those problems.
But we're going to ask attorneys for help when writing steps.
You're going to ask attorneys for help.
We don't want more split closings.
We don't want split closings. We want it's supposed to be a wonderful process.
Right.
It's stressful, but a closing is supposed to be a relief, joyful, a next step.
Yeah.
And the last thing we want is for people to start getting up in arms about things that are misinterpreted.
Right.
So getting it right at the front end, asking your attorneys, hey, help me with this, that's the way to go.
Totally.
And look at it.
Right.
We had one the other day. Everybody signed it. Everybody signed it. Agents, buyers, sellers. It was not what they agreed to.
Oh, no.
It was just, there were some typos. The agent was going too fast. Interchanged buyer and seller. It was bad. But nobody looked at it. So that's that, thankfully everybody was on the same page, and they're like, oh, oops, let's go back and fix this. But to that point, we talk about touches in a file in our office, and every time you go into a file, every time you go into a property, you're touching it.
Okay.
And that's time, right? You have to get in, you have to make the changes, you have to get out, you have to get in. The least amount of touches you can have, the more efficient you're going to run. Mm-hmm. And the more time we're going to have to do the other things, right? To put the time into making sure we've got all the I's dotted and the T's crossed. So that's a very helpful way to approach things, and that way we can just move forward without glitches and hiccups.
Absolutely.
I mean, you see these successful agents, and you talk to agents, and there's some agents that we have that their files just seem to go smoothly. And then we have some agents that it feels like every file is a fight. And not necessarily their fault. Sometimes they just kind of have a run of luck. But sometimes it's just they have a smoother approach to things, and you can just see it. You can feel it.
I think a lot of that, and we've talked about this on the podcast before, obviously you haven't been on all those episodes, but we've talked about just preparing your clients for success and to have that smooth transaction by setting expectations early. Mm-hmm. And so obviously, you don't want to fire hydrant them in the face the first day you meet with them, but as the process is moving along, or as you're getting close to that time where the contract is going to be executed, explaining to them, like you said, hey, the attorney is going to be reaching out and they're going to want to collect a seller information sheet. This is not abnormal. It is very important that we do this promptly. Mm-hmm. Blah, 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 blah. And so queuing that person up, queuing that seller, that buyer up for success, like you said, these people don't do this all the time. We do. Yeah. But queuing them up for success by creating an expectation of what's to come is huge, in my opinion, in the success of the movement of the transaction. So, for example, if we as an agent, I don't get to work with the attorney that I want to work with every single time. Right. But what I can do is say, hey, I'm not super familiar with this attorney, but as soon as we get assigned a pre-closer, I'm going to let you know who that is, and you should be looking for emails from them because they're getting, an email from this, and when they get that first email, I ask the pre-closer, please CC me on it. I write an additional email saying, hey, this is a good email. Please respond to it. Let me know when you've done that. That way, trying to make the pre-closer's job easier, trying to make sure I'm in the line of communication and that my client feels like I'm still guiding them through the process rather than kind of pushing them off to the side and saying, like, you deal with the attorney on your own. Yeah. Because the goal to me, and I hope other agents, is that we're a partner to you guys. Like, this is a team sport here. Attorney, appraiser, lender, all the people who are a part of a transaction, it should be facilitated like a team sport. Yeah. And quite frankly, in my opinion, the real estate agent is kind of the center piece of that.
Quarterback.
So it's our job to make sure that we're helping you guys create that smooth transaction as much as we can control. Obviously, it's not our job to do your job.
Well, you raised several good little points there. I mean, communication. So many things fall through the cracks just because people aren't communicating properly. They're relying on texts, or they think the other party is going to do it. They just assume. We all know what happens when you assume, right? And then the team aspect of it, I think this is just kind of a soapbox thing, but I feel like some realtors view lenders and appraisers and closing attorneys as a vendor, as kind of just a contractor in the job rather than a teammate. And to your point, if you can look at the whole team, if they're getting a loan, if they've got a closing, the preferred closing attorney, you've got your appraiser, that's when things go together.
Right.
Because you can communicate. You do have a comfort level. You can say, look, if you got a closing with us and something isn't happening or you feel like you've missed something, you can call me and say, Collin, like, what's going on? I haven't seen anything. And I can go look. I mean, and you can get it done like that.
Right.
Having that relationship and looking at it as a team versus these are my vendors is a very important thing. One of the problems we have, too, is people view the other agent as a combatant, right? Not as a cooperating party.
Well, they're part of that team, really.
And they're part of that team. So if we can all be on the same team, we're going to get there better. And one of the problems we see, too, is when, commission agreements. I'm not going to get into all that stuff, but we still are going to assume it's a 6% and then a 3-3 split unless we see something differently.
Okay.
And a lot of times we don't get the commission agreement till the very end. So we're not able to really give the seller accurate numbers until we get that. And a lot of times agents are giving credits, they're paying for certain things, there's not an even split. There's a lot of things going on, especially right now with the commissions, that we can't know without seeing it.
Right.
And so many times we have it, well, hey, can you send me the commission agreement? Well, the other agent was supposed to have sent that. Well, they didn't. Can you send it? Like this back and forth. We had a closing a couple of weeks ago where there was 3 amendments. Thankfully, it was a cash deal. The parties were sophisticated. Everybody knew what was going on but us. Okay? And we get to the closing table, and they're like, these numbers aren't right. And there were 3 amendments that had not been sent to us.
Oh, my goodness.
And both of the agents were great agents, but they both just assumed the other one was doing it. And they didn't, they just said, hey, they're a good agent, they're going to send it. It was kind of one of those, they're pointing the other way kind of thing, and we didn't get it. So that kind of communication is key because thankfully it was cash.
Right.
We didn't have a lender to deal with, but had that not been, that could have been a big deal.
Right.
Right?
Could have delayed the closing.
Could have delayed the closing. And really to know, like, malicious fault of anybody.
Right.
It was just poor communication on that.
Sure.
So, it so much of it, and the other thing you said is expectations. I mean, I joke, low expectations are a key to a happy life.
Or no expectations.
Or no expectations, really. But, setting them is key because everybody has their own preconceived notion about how things are supposed to happen.
Sure.
And they never do. My favorite quote is, man plans, God laughs, right? And here we are, right? And especially in this, I don't even know how you would describe the market we're in right now. It's insane. Things are happening quickly. They're happening in different ways. And having all that stuff documented and communicated is so, so key. I mean, we've had parties be upset with us because they just assumed that we got everything we needed by some magic website.
Interesting.
Right? Why are you asking me for all this? Why do I have to be doing this? And it's not that way. And as an agent, to your point, setting those expectations, having those conversations spaced out appropriately in times when you know your client's going to be able to receive it.
Right.
Like you said, the fire hose thing.
Yeah, don't do that.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, they won't remember anything.
They don't remember anything. I mean, people black out during this process, right?
You got to, like you said, phase it out, and you got to know the appropriate timing for these things.
Yeah.
And
that way they're not overwhelmed. Well, they're less overwhelmed.
Sure.
And they're understanding the process.
Right.
And we can avoid so much stress. It's a stressful thing, but when we're asking for something Like this is a thing that happens all the time. You're asking a seller for this. You're asking a seller for this. And then they finally get back to you a week before closing. And now we're struggling to get orders.
Right.
We're struggling to get payoffs.
And then they're frustrated.
Why can't I see my numbers?
Right.
And then we're sitting there like, well, I don't know if we're going to be able to close on time. And then agents are mad at us because they've got expectations that they've set.
Right.
So it's all a cohesive bundle.
Well, and the agent really needs to know their client too. Like I've got clients that are not very tech savvy and don't like to be on the computer and maybe don't even check their email every day. And so I know, as we're going through this process, like for example, we've got an HOA we've got to deal with. We've got to order a closing letter. I'm telling the pre-closer as soon as I get in touch with her, hey, this client of mine is not the quickest on their feet, so let's order this ASAP, which they're going to probably do anyway.
Right.
But that way we can get that right away, and I can get on my client and be like, hey, one very important thing before you do anything else, before you take your nap, okay? We're going to order this closing letter today.
Please just do it.
Right. And so we have the responsibility of knowing our clients. Like, you've probably worked with people where they're just on the ball. Things come to you immediately. You send an email out, it's right back. We've got clients, and you've probably dealt with people that are very slow to get things turned around. And so if you have a time-sensitive situation and you have a person who is not time-sensitive, making sure that we stay on top of them, because there's only so much you guys could do.
Yeah.
Another thing that I feel like, would help agents to kind of keep in mind is, like you said, delivering everything up front and delivering it quickly. I will never forget my first closing representing a buyer. I did not know that I needed to send the contract to the attorney.
There you go.
No lie.
You'll never mess that up again.
It had been like 2 weeks, and the listing agent was like, "Excuse me, do you have a contact for the attorney? We haven't heard from them." And I was like, "Oh yeah, let me get that." So I email the attorney at this time. Mind you, I'm 22 years old. I email and I'm like, "Hey, do you have a contact for this agent? They want to talk to a pre-closer." And they're like, "Well, we don't have a file set up." And I was like, "Oh, how do we do that?" And they're like, "No one sent the contract." And I was like, "Well, shouldn't they have done that?" And then I realized, oh wait, we asked for this attorney.
Yeah.
We're the buyer's representative that asked for this
should have done
attorney.
that.
Yeah, so I had to confess to that agent. I was like, "Look, this is my first deal, and I didn't know I needed to send the contract to the
Well, at least
attorney."
you're honest about it. Yeah, that happens.
But as an agent, again, processes, efficiency, expectations, communication, all these things, it takes a minute to get established and situated, but once you do, as an agent, we can create processes for ourselves if your broker doesn't already have them for you that are like, okay, at this point we need to, you go under contract, it's binding, you've collected everything, you've reviewed it. Don't just sloppily send it over to you guys, but make sure it's all complete and then quickly deliver it to the attorneys. And then make sure that we stay on top of communication with you guys as well. There's a lot of technicalities that we'll never know about. There's a lot of stuff that we wouldn't know unless we've been through that experience. I think of, for example, I had a client a few years back. They were doing a 1031 exchange. I had never done that before. So the first thing that I did is tell the attorney, hey, this is a 1031 exchange. I'm sure you'll see that. But if there's anything that I need to know as an agent that I wouldn't know because this isn't my job, could you let me know up front so I can stay on top of it?
Yeah.
Another thing that I walked through that I did not know was, as technical as it was, a mail-away closing in California.
It's a nightmare.
A nightmare. So there's little things and nuances that we don't know as agents, because it's not our job to be doing this every day, that if we're communicating early, like I had said to this attorney at that time where we had the California mail away, hey, this is going to be a mail away in California. Are there going to be any issues with that? Do we need to do anything in regard to timing? And he was like, I am so glad you told me that now. Because we needed to set some stuff up that was going to take at least 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was a cash deal, so we were going to have a tight turnaround time anyway. So just communicating, and then, like you said, remembering that this is a team sport and that the other agent is not our opponent. The co-oping agent is a co-oping agent. We are working together. And if, like you said, everybody can position themselves to be on one team, I've rarely had an experience that hasn't gone well, other than maybe some kind of title issue or something and they didn't have title insurance. But that was its own nightmare.
There's things that are out of people's control, right? I mean, things happen with the house the night before the closing, right? All the nightmares, and we just can't control those. But if you're getting to that point and you've gotten there as a team, it's easier to work together on it than if you've been warring with one another. I mean, look, negotiations are sometimes going to go sideways. It's just going to happen. But if you've got that kind of the attitude of we're trying to get to the same place together, it gets there better.
Right. And even if you have a client that maybe is difficult or maybe not on the same page as you, I know I've walked through transactions where I haven't been thrilled about how my client has behaved.
No.
I have to remember, and the other agent has to remember, that we're just buffers.
Right.
Right. So like if I can come to you and say, hey, I'm not thrilled about the direction this has gone in. However, we need to get this to the closing table.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do everything in our power for you and I to continue on in a upward motion here.
Yeah, right.
So a lot of great information and so much that you guys do that we don't probably still understand and never will.
Well, and then there's the same thing. That's why we have our jobs and our
Right.
specialties.
Right.
And we take care of this part. You take care of your part. And we're all going to get there and have a nice candy-filled, happy closing.
If we're at Campbell and Brannon,
If
it
you're
will be
Campbell and
candy
Brannon, lots of
filled.
candy. Like that's the thing. I mean, and yeah, we know, like especially now, I feel like a lot of the sellers that are selling have to sell. Mm-hmm. Somebody's passed away. It's an estate. Unfortunately, there's divorce. Mm-hmm. People are getting transferred for work. Or it's a good thing. They're having a new baby and their house is too small or whatever. But there are a lot of people who, are not necessarily only focused on the house.
Right.
And that's where we have to step back and remember that too.
Absolutely.
It's a giving profession in that it's not, people say closing attorneys are transactional lawyers. You're doing a contract, but there's so much more than that, right? It's a personal thing. And we have to remind ourselves when we're getting frustrated with people where they're coming from. And I think if you can remember the humanity in it and just step back for a minute and say, okay, let's get that straight. And then we'll focus on the I's and the T's, right? Getting that squared away.
Absolutely. I mean, that's everybody on that team should be keeping that in mind.
Yeah.
If you had to give real estate agents, just in general, one tip that you feel like would really help, other than the things we talked about, communication, all this stuff, is there one specific thing that you could say, like, this would be a game changer, this would be really golden, or you could reiterate something that you already went over? What would that be?
I honestly think education, even if, I know you guys have to get your hours, right? And I know you guys are busy. And I know so many people wait till the day before and they sit and they get their 32 hours. They just don't sleep, or they listen to podcasts or whatever the case is. But there's so much good education out there that just, you can tell. Like, we can tell when we've got an educated agent that understands what's happening versus one that doesn't. It sounds cheesy, but it's true. Like, the more you know, right, the more you're going to understand. And I think truly having a trusted closing attorney partner.
Huge.
Campbell and Brannon is very trustworthy. But no, having someone that you can feel comfortable going to
Right.
when you're like, I need help.
Right.
I mean, some of our best agents I talk to a lot because they're busy, which is great, but they ask for help to make sure it's done right. And most of the time they do know. It's just double check me kind of stuff.
Right.
So understanding that, being an expert in your field, and the only way you're going to do that is, one, by learning and doing, right? But if you're new and you haven't had a lot of transactions under your belt, you'll get there, but you've got some time to learn. And I think that's key. And asking questions. Like, to your point, I don't know what I'm doing here. What am I supposed to know? You don't know what you don't know, right? And so you get something like a 1031 exchange you've never dealt with. Call your partner. Call your closing attorney. Hey, I know this is part of the deal, but that's as far as it goes.
Right.
Educate me a little
Right.
bit. And then, I mean, it's just ask.
Sure.
If you don't know, just ask.
Right. I think those are absolutely wonderful tips. And especially, even doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, 1 day, 10 years.
Right.
Having that trusted partner doesn't mean you get to close with them every single time, but somebody that you can ask questions. And if you do get the opportunity to make a recommendation, you can recommend that person to, represent you from the closing table.
Yeah.
But being able to ask those questions and know that you're getting advice not just from word of mouth at the office, but from someone who is the actual attorney doing the work is huge. And, the more you develop that relationship, the more you'll learn, and the more you'll be able to actually advocate and help your clients on the front end rather than learn by the mistakes.
Yeah, right. I mean, you don't feel like you can't call your attorney if they're not closing it.
Right.
Like a lot of my day is spent helping people with transactions we're not working on, or that they haven't even gotten a contract.
Right.
We don't even know where it's going to go.
Right.
But I think people are afraid to ask questions. Hey, I know this is a stupid question, kind of thing.
Yeah. But better to ask the question than to walk around, twiddling your thumbs, wondering if you're getting it right.
Yeah, and then you find out you got it wrong.
Yeah, and then you screw it up for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So, I mean, it's key to just learn your craft.
Absolutely.
And get better at it.
But since we can't learn every single part of it, having that partner that you can ask those questions. Same with a lender, same with maybe having an appraiser partner, just having somebody that you can bounce these things off of as you go.
Yeah.
Huge.
I mean, we have the same thing. I mean, we don't know every answer.
Right.
And we have partners that we call. Hey, I've got somebody asking me a bankruptcy question. I have no idea. Can you help? Those kind of things.
Yeah, because no matter who you are in your career, you're going to have something that comes along at some point that you've never dealt with, or that is a new, an anomaly.
Yeah.
So that's a great. I'm so glad you said that about having a real estate attorney in your pocket that you have a relationship with, not just somebody that you bug, but actually, pay the favor back, give them some business. And then also education, I think, is so important. And like you said, some real estate agents are notorious for waiting till the last minute to get CE, and then they sit online and go crazy. But really, strive to invest in yourself by getting quality CE and quality education as you go. And sometimes forget the CE, you just need to learn about something.
Yeah.
And you guys do a great job of providing lots of different educational opportunities as well.
Yeah, not everything's going to give you credit. We do lunch and learns and things like that are helpful.
Well, you wouldn't be having them if they weren't valuable.
Right, exactly. Like, we don't just talk.
Yeah.
Well, some of us do, but yeah, it's a nice part of our job is to be able to provide helpful information.
Right.
To help the agents we're talking to go out and be better at their job.
And hey, that's another platform to go up and have a conversation where you're not just sitting at a closing table, because it's not appropriate to start trying to form a relationship with a closing attorney while everyone else is trying to close.
Yeah, right.
So thank you, Collin. Man,
thanks, Kate.
Gosh, you had a lot of nuggets in there, and I hope that everyone was able to take something fantastic away from this.
Me too.
I think they will. And if they see you around, I hope they come up and say hi. And I hope they send you a little bit of business.
I love it.
And we're so glad that you're here, and we appreciate your involvement with the association.
We love it. It's a great group, and we're here to help.
And we'll see you around.
All right. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you for tuning in to the Atlanta Realtors Rundown. Please subscribe, and for more information on how to get engaged, check us out at atlantarealtors.com. We look forward to having you join us for the next episode.